Hello and welcome to this Thought for the Day from the Chapels Royal, Her Majesty's Tower of London. Greetings and good health to you wherever you are. I want to talk today about something that I think underpins a lot of what we do and how we live, but about which we seem to talk less than we do about, for example, faith and belief. What I want to talk about is related to both faith and belief, but seems to me to be interestingly different, while no less important than those other two. What I want to talk about is trust. Trust. Now, we often make the difference between faith and belief, belief and faith. Surprisingly, perhaps, we sometimes use the word belief to indicate an element of doubt, as when we say, I believe this to be the case, but I could be mistaken. I believe I paid the milkman, but I may have forgotten. As Christians, however, we normally use the word to indicate our firm and solid commitment to statements about God, as in the Creed, I believe in one God, and so on. Now, it may be argued that, strictly speaking, the words in the creeds are statements of faith rather than belief, because we cannot bring forward incontrovertible facts to substantiate our beliefs, as the writer of the letter to the Hebrews expressed it. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Indeed, by faith, our ancestors received approval. By faith, we understand that the worlds were prepared by the word of God, so that what is seen was made from things that are not visible. It's surely over the gap at the end of our assertions of belief that we make the leap of faith. But then we come to trust. To say that we trust in God is not the same as saying that we have faith in God. If I have faith in God, that means that I assert God's existence, even if I cannot prove it. If I say that I trust in God, that means rather that I take it as axiomatic that God has my best interest at heart. That does not mean that I should always get what I want when I pray. As the words of the Book of Common Prayer put it so prudently in the prayer of St. Chrysostom, fulfill now, O Lord, the desires and petitions of thy servants as may be most expedient for them. But it does mean precisely that I trust God to provide what is best for me. To talk about trust, then, is to talk not about assertions of God's existence, but to enter the realm of our relationship with God. Trust, as a concept, makes sense only between two or more individuals. Now, you may immediately object and ask, what does it mean then when we say, I cannot trust myself? My answer is that when we use that expression, we are echoing the words of St. Paul in his letter to the Romans. I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate. Sigmund Freud, too, had something to say about that, but I don't intend to go there now. Thank you very much. So please accept as our working definition that trust is a posture towards one or more other people in which I assume that my interests will not be unfairly neglected, infringed, or willfully damaged. That being so, I surrender some or even all control over my destiny to others. This, I think, is how we use the word in everyday life. We trust doctors and medical staff to act in our best long-term interests, even if we have to suffer short-term discomfort or pain. More generally, we trust people in positions of authority over us to act fairly towards all people and not to use their positions to further their own interests. We trust auditors and other external examiners of financial accounts to report fairly and without favor when scrutinizing those accounts. We rely on trust for society to work. The betrayal of trust is one of the worst offenses. those with authority over vulnerable people, whether children or adults, who go on to abuse that authority, rightly arouse our condemnation and fury. There have sadly been many murderers, but Dr. Harold Shipman stands out because he abused the sacred trust of his patients and their families in someone whose fundamental professional commitment is to do no harm. Luckily, in a democracy, we get to choose our leaders according to the will of the majority. Whether or not we voted for those in power at any one time, we have the right to insist on their probity and even-handedness in the exercise of that authority and the spending of our taxes. Thomas Jefferson famously said that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. He did not say, although he might have done, that in order to ensure that we are impartially governed, we must search all the nooks and crannies for crooks and cronies. Just think about the place that trust and betrayal play in books, plays, films, television series, poetry, and virtually every other literary form, from grand opera to soap opera. This would not be the case if trust were not so deeply rooted in how we live alongside other people, as individuals or in groups. To trust another, such as the captain of a ship at sea or the pilot of an aircraft on which we are a passenger, not to mention a surgeon, anaesthetist, or nurse who will have power of life and death over us while we are unconscious, is literally to put our life in their hands. And this brings me back to our trust in God. I believe in God means that I believe that God exists and that certain things about God are true. I have faith in God means I hold to be true those belief statements about God's nature in spite of my inability to set out logical proofs. But surely to say, I trust in God is to say something else. It means that I am prepared to entrust my life to God, to make myself helpless before God, to accept God's will for me, even when it is not what I wanted or expected. The three are clearly interconnected, but distinct. It's always struck me as rather wonderful, but also rather weird, that every US dollar bill bears the words, "In God we trust." But whatever else you think of it, it is a handy pocket reminder to every Christian to think about the real nature of our relationship with and our expectations of God. In God we trust. Do we? Do we really?